this just fantasy? I suppose it is. This is the Savage Sword of Conan, resurrected, as it were, by Titan Comics. So they're the ones who currently publish the Conan the Barbarian comics, like monthlies, and so they've decided to bring back the magazine-sized black and white format Savage Sword of Conan. And I was very excited when they announced this. Of course, I love the original Savage Sword of Conan, and I also am just a fan of more fantasy comics, so I'm just going to be pleased with it existing, let's say. And I was curious because, the Savage Sword of Conan had a really great set of creators working on it, especially in the art department, but also some good writers. Some great classic stories were told in Savage Sword of Conan, and also original ones. So it's a lot to live up to. And you got John Arcudi doing the writing duties here, Jim Zub's contributing. You got a foreword by Roy Thomas, and the artist for this book, or for the large portion of it at least, is a guy named Max von Fafner, who I was unfamiliar with before this, but now I've seen some of his work, and this is his cover, showing us the ass end of a dinosaur, as it were. Fun stuff. So I don't normally like coming at things too critically. In fact, I mostly try to focus on stuff that I really like, because it's easier to talk about stuff you like, and also I just want to be more positive and put some more positivity out there. So rather than I'm going to talk at length about something that I don't like, I usually just focus on stuff I do like. Now, I like the idea of this book, and I'm looking forward to more issues. That said, I wasn't super into this one. And I will point out a few things why, but I'm not going to be laborious on it. It's probably why you might be surprised that this isn't a longer video. And who knows, maybe it'll end up being longer than I think it will be. But generally speaking, I think there's a lot of room for improvement, and I'm going to even bring out an older book just as a comparison visually. But yeah, let's just go ahead and open it up and get into it. Already, nice little, you got to keep this quote on literally everything that has Conan in it, because if you don't, you're gonna be shot out of a cannon. Yeah, you got to have that little quote. Got our credits page, and already we got some nice looking stuff, representing the black and white, because they gotta keep that nostalgia in there. And then we got our contents here. We got some pinups. We got a Roberto de la Torre pinup, which of course is going to be gorgeous. We got a Belit pinup, and we got some other art, a Solomon Kane illustration by Howard Chaykin, which sounds really cool. And we got a backup story, that's Solomon Kane's story by writer-artist Patch Zircher. This I'm actually looking forward to talking to, more so than the rest of the book, which is by John Arcudi and Max von Fafner. And again, I don't like being so critical, but I kind of just have to be honest. And I was going to talk about this anyway, because it's a pretty momentous thing. Look at this. This looks awesome. This is just straight black and white artwork. No zipatones or shading or anything like that. And it is just a killer image. Literally. But it's, I think, incredible. And we all love how close Roberto de la Torre's art is to our main man, John Buscema, but just on its own, I feel like this really works in the black and white format. And it's interesting because the the feel of the paper is very like old school, like newsprinty, and maybe that's why we got these like kind of printer lines in here for how it was printed, because those lines are even in this artwork here. So that's just going to be a part of it, and I kind of like the grit of that. I think that's nice. And then we have a big Hyborian Age map, and something that I will just note just already here, like I think this is this is a really cool work of art. I love a fantasy map. I will never go back on that. However, the level of granular shading to it, and by granular I mean the variety of grays used here, I think doesn't really work that well for the kind of printing that they're doing. I think you could do this in black and white as is and print it on different paper or print it in a different way, and I think it would look fine and crisp and neat. But here it looks kind of muddy. And mud's going to come back again. But yeah, I think this is where I'm going to get into like kind of the main issues I have with it. Because, okay, so we have this, I think, potentially really gorgeous Balit pinup by Rebecca Puebla. But it's just, yeah, the printer lines in there are kind of wreaking havoc on those deep blacks. And, but again, like, I still think that it's doing all right, but like I'm surprised to see such a painterly approach in this black and white book, especially printed on like newsprint or this kind of toothy paper as it is. So here we go. We get into our main story here. Now, some people I'm sure are going to be like, "What do you have issue with the art in this setup or in this issue?" And there's parts of it I think are really great. There's parts of it I really like. There's other parts of it that just rub me the wrong way, and I'm gonna have some theories about why it may. But also, if you love this, love this all, great. I want people to enjoy things, and so if you really like this, if you like the whole thing start to finish, and it feels great while reading it, I couldn't be happier. Really, I want people to enjoy things, and I'm not trying to explain why you should enjoy it. I'm just saying why I had issues with it and wasn't quite as pleased. So Max von Fafner clearly has he works digitally. Just the way that like these certain things are like outlined. There's a outlining here that tells me that it's digital, and and he's got some brushes that he's working in here with like some of the grass. There's some layering I can see, but I feel like one of the main issues I have with it is on this first page here is there's a lot of he's doing a lot of stuff that's dark but not black. And because of that, there's a muddiness to it. And there's kind of a lack of clarity of the image. And it's like, I get what I'm seeing here. It's a procession of an army. You got elephants in here, siege engines, and people on horseback and walking and grass. And it's like, okay, I could, and you're probably saying, well, hey, you can tell what everything is. Isn't that the point? Checkmate, Dan. And I'm like, all right, good point. But I just think it looks like there's the potential for so much articulation on so many more of these figures and the elephants and stuff like that, but we're not seeing it because the way it was colored, it's so the grays are at times so close together or so close to black that we don't see that definition, and it's a shame because I feel like there's plenty of stuff going on here. Another thing that I'm going to point out, and I don't I don't want to say that this is universally bad or you shouldn't do this, or it's just something that I notice, is it looks to me like in many cases in the artwork, they're using Maximum Fafner is using a 3D model to not only get the pose or the look of the figure, but also to do the shading, or to at least guide his shading. Because okay, you look at this figure. This panel I got no problems with, and that's because it looks like he's fully drawing this figure all on his own, and he's got lots of articulation in the muscles and stuff like that. But it's also, there's a lot of character to these lines, and also the grays aren't too crazy. It gets kind of too dark here, but ultimately I feel like this is a strong panel. This one isn't too bad, but there's just parts of it like where I feel like some of the line work doesn't match up. Doesn't quite fit next to each other. And this, I'll be honest, these elephants almost look like they're just like have a Photoshop filter on them, because they just there's stylization of a human figure in this panel. There's even some stylization of a lion here. It's pretty close to a real lion, but like these elephants, especially with like all the folds in the skin, it looks like a manipulated photo of an elephant, or if not a photo of an elephant, a 3D model of an elephant. Okay, so we're gonna go on here, and again, I don't want to belabor this. We have our first image of Conan, and this is a good image too, because it looks all drawn, and stylized by, there's choices being made by an artist. By the way, if I mentioned the digital workflow, it's just as a note. I have a digital workflow with my work, so I there's no critique there. But we're about to get to a part that I'm not a fan of, and it may be an unpopular opinion, but it's a big problem I have. And Conan's looking pretty good, I'd say. And again, there's a lot of muddy darkness in this, but I guess it's to help him stand out. But yeah, there's just the application of the grays is not quite the best. But here we have a character, both character design as well as rendering, that I am not a fan of. So this lady, Enia, say, right away when I saw this character, one, I was like, well, that's a odd outfit for, especially because, okay, so the plot, if we want to just sum up the plot real quick, the plot of this is Conan is part of this mercenary army. He's following this dude that's on the elephant, and he's got a pair of lions that are his pets, and they are going to reclaim his kingdom that is this treasure-filled kingdom, and they're planning to siege a city, and he's got all these soldiers, and she is the siege engine architect, or designer, not architect. That's for buildings. She builds the siege engines and designs them, and there is a rule in this army, this force, that she can't be touched, especially in any kind of sexual way, I'm assuming, specifically, but like you can't, nobody can fuck with her because she's in charge of the siege engines, and if you do, you're going to get killed and executed, like, immediately. And that's what happens to this guy. And with that said, what kind of outfit is this to wear if it's like nobody can touch you? And I mean, I guess it's hot, I don't know, but like, and by hot I mean it must be a hot climate, because otherwise, I mean, I don't know. It just doesn't make a whole lot of sense. But the outfit being as it may, whatever, it's a Conan story, I guess. The bigger issue I have is how, as soon as I saw it, I thought, oh, that looks like a 3D model. Not that there's not any kind of drawing over top of it. I'm just saying that the base of it, the base of that feels like a 3D model. Like he has a 3D model that he is modeling, manipulating, maybe has different like options, whatever program he's using for it, and that is what he's using for every time he renders this character. And the thing that really gives it away to me is the shading. The shading is so soft and precise, uh, that and whereas like you look at Conan here, it looks like a drawn image. It looks like, and the shading looks like it's applied, roughly, loosely, like this guy even. The shading is applied roughly, loosely enough where it's like, okay, the shading makes sense, but there's enough room for artistic error that it doesn't feel like, it feels like a drawing, like a rendering. This feels like you saw how the 3D model was lit and you did it exactly it, or you copied it, I don't know. And it still retains that feeling like it's a 3D object. And so she stands out like a sore thumb. And it bothered me every time I saw it. And that's probably for me an art problem. That is me being an artist, being able to see that. I imagine most people who look at it are like, "What are you talking about, dude? Who cares?" Like it's a hot lady, and that's the whole point. But I also just think she stands out stylistically, and probably because one because she's the only woman in most of the book, but also like how stylized these dudes are and how they're shaded and colored and all that stuff, that all fits together. But she just doesn't. She stands out, and maybe that's an artistic choice. She's supposed to stand out like that. I mean, obviously because she's a lady, but I feel like it just it doesn't read properly to me. Yeah, like here, it just feels I could just see the 3D model of it, including like the underlighting and stuff. I don't know. And there's even a part that feels more egregious. And then with all the scenes without her, like this, I don't get that sense. Like he's well shaded here, but it's not. It still looks like an artist like making choices or like looking at something and then doing it as best he can, rather than it being like a 1-to-1 reference point. Um, Also, there's some issues with how the lion's hair looks occasionally, but whatever. Those are very specific things, and essentially, Conan like doesn't quite fully trust this guy. This stuff, this whole sequence, I am not a fan of. Yeah, I could see the 3D. I can see the 3D modelness of it, especially right here. It looks like an ad for an old video game or something like that, like in a magazine. And there's also this weird halo effect that happens around it. I don't know. But yeah, it just the lighting of it, and even like, I feel like she has like he has like several expressions that she can do, and he's again essentially tracing over it. And I'm not even knocking the tracing of it. It's just in the tracing of it, or light boxing in the old days that you would call it. There's a way to do it where it still feels like you're drawing it. It still feels like it has some connection to your other figures or other objects or other elements of the scene. And she just doesn't. She just doesn't. And it may be that Max von Fafner is just way more comfortable drawing dudes and less comfortable drawing ladies, or is less sure or less confident, and you just decided, all right, I'm just going to use this 3D model. That way she's consistent throughout the book, and also it gives me a helping hand to render her properly. And again, it's a personal thing. If you have no issues with it, it's fine. But of course, and then even if I have issues with it, it's fine because it's just another thing. But I'm just explaining why it threw me off, and I wasn't as into it. And also, it's just there's elements to the story that I'm just not super into. You know, they're breaking into the country, and there's this, and then a dinosaur breaks through, and I have a feeling that this is like, aside from like the weird spikes on it, this feels like a 3D model, again, another 3D model that he is using, because it seems like it's roughly the same pose for for most of the dinosaur images. Like most of the time, yeah, like the mouth's open. Also, this head is weirdly wide, and we shouldn't be able to see both eyes, but whatever. Yeah, it's. I wanted to be excited to see them fight a dinosaur, but I just was not super into the dinosaur because it looks kind of funky. Like it doesn't, yeah, and whatever. They use a ballista to kill it. That's cool, I guess. But yeah, what's going on with like these lions and like the hair parting? Again, I don't know. It's these are all nitpicks, I guess. And here he is killing these lions because, you know, whatever. It's, you know, and it's not like the story itself is a bad Conan story, but I wasn't into the supporting characters. And of course here she is. And again, the smoothness of it just reads wrong. Like, look, I don't understand why, like, there wasn't a way to make it look a little bit more like it belonged with the rest of the stuff. I don't know. It's just whatever, you know. I've said it enough. And yeah, this feels very much like a 3D rendering. Like if I didn't like it looks like almost like an old video game, and like this too. And it's like built except for him. He stands out. He doesn't look, because he drew that man. But everything else, or so much else, just feels like I don't want to have to draw these buildings. So I'm just going to throw a filter on it. And I don't want to say that like you can't do that, but you can, and still make it look right, or still make it look like it belongs. He even did that with the skeletons. I don't know. As an artist, I love drawing skulls and skeletons, and those are, but whatever. Yeah. And anyway, I'm done shitting on this comic. You know, I'm not even gonna like how it ends is whatever. There's another dinosaur. It still has the same fucking pose, and it's got weird long arms and spikes on its head. But yeah, and then here's another lady, and she doesn't look as near. She doesn't look. She looks like she is just she fits. But it's not. It's not. I don't know. I don't know. I also love this. I believe it's a Dan Panosian illustration. That's awesome. That looks like it fits in the black and white book, and it looks like it's rendered properly. Okay, I'm gonna stop. I'm gonna come back to this here. Okay, so it gets the art gets kind of dark, kind of murky, kind of muddy, and I just was like, what? Like, was something lost in how you render things? Because here's Conan number 56. And not that, like, everything has to be, you know, John Buscema, Tony DeZuniga art, but there's a clarity to this. I could see what everything is, and I can pour over the line work and just absorb it, and also everything feels like it connects with the other things as far as the art goes. Um, yeah, and it's savage. It's definitely savage. But like, as far as like, yeah, just storytelling, it just all it reads, it tracks, and I feel like this is just a great example of like, this is black and white, like using black and white where it feels dynamic, but it's also not murky. Like, even with throwing zipatones on there, and yeah, that's an old school way to do it. And I'm not saying you have to still do it. It doesn't have to keep looking like this. I'm just saying. I never felt like I was reading something where I was struggling to see what I like, where most of the scene was hidden in murk. All right, that's all. But I also wanted to point out Patrick Zircher and his Solomon Kane story, I think, are great. I think the art looks awesome. It also feels like it's got there is something of like a digital workflow to it, but again, that's not a inherently negative thing. But it also just reads really well. I mean, it definitely. What I think is great is that the line art, the black, if you will, is the darkest color as far as like what's on the page. So the line art is the darkest, which includes the text, and then everything else is lighter than that. Like the closest thing is like right here, and it's still much lighter than the black. So I feel like that just helps it read so much better. I think all of the elements feel like he is drawing all of them. They feel all connected, all these folks, the interiors, the animals, everything connects. Like this, yeah, and this is an amazing panel. I really love this. So as far as like which part of the book I enjoyed more, definitely the Solomon Kane story. This Solomon Kane story I think is great, and I love, yeah, again, the art really works well, and the black and white is just super solid. And again, it's on this toothy paper, but it reads really well. And there's all kinds of fun monster shit going on in here. And it's also a great, like, character wise, there's some great character stuff going on in here, and I really appreciate that. So yeah, I really like the Solomon Kane story, and I'm looking forward to that continuing. But ultimately, Howard Chaykin here. Ultimately, I felt like, and again, like look at the reproduction quality of the other covers in here. You can barely see what anything is. Even the cover I have. So I'm not going to say like skip it, because if you like what you saw, pick it up. And if you disagree with not necessarily, if you like this, great. Like I said before, I want people to like things. And I knew I needed to talk about this because it's kind of a big deal as far as like fantasy comics and stuff go right now. But I didn't like that I had mostly critical things to say about it, but I guess that'll happen sometimes. But after this, I want to talk about something I really like, so we're going to just do something else. So that is, my take on Savage Sword of Conan #1, the revitalized, reborn version of it, and I want to pick up whatever comes next. I want to support this because I'm hoping for some gold coming through, and I think a lot of it has to do with the art, but also if they could workshop some of the process. I don't know. The thing I would say is like to say Max von Fafner is like lighten the gray tones a bit. Just lighten it up by like 10, 20%, and it's so much more readable. Or it's just there's a little more clarity. Anyway, that's Savage Sword of Conan #1, and this is Sidequesters, my book. And it's actually a full color, not black and white. Although I do have a black and white anthology book, which is my Haxon series. And even I run into some issues with like gray tones getting kind of too dark in there. But you know, I'm an individual artist doing the best I can, and I think it's not too bad. But oh well, at least I hand drew all of it. But these are available. This is available on my website if you're interested in more fantasy comics. And this collects the first 8 issues. And then if you like more silly things or superhero-y things, I have my 3-panel Origin webcomic, which this collects the first 3 years in a paperback. And then this is a book of short stories with some of those characters. And it's basically, I create a character, tell their origin in 3 panels, and it's usually something silly and kind of awkward, like the guy has a toilet for a head, and he can run really fast, so he's the running toilet. So, that is that, and we're done.